Billionaire husband takes his mistress to expensive resort, but his pregnant wife finds out. In the heart of Manhattan's glittering skyline, where billion-dollar deals and discreet scandals brew behind penthouse doors, a secret threatens to burst into the public eye. Alexander Harrington, the debonair billionaire known for his ruthless business tactics, has whisked away a beguiling companion to a lavish island retreat, unaware that his pregnant wife, Sophia, is about to discover the affair. Beyond crystal champagne flutes and hushed villa corridors, a tangle of lies is set to unravel. The stakes couldn't be higher. Reputations, fortunes, and an unborn child's future hang in the balance. Brace yourselves for a story of love, betrayal, and retribution. The doorman at the Harrington Tower, dressed in a crisp navy uniform and polished shoes, barely concealed his awe each time Alexander Harrington strode through the lobby. Alexander was the kind of man who made an impression: tall, athletic, with sharp cheekbones and an easy, practiced smile. He possessed an aura of inevitability. People called him unstoppable, and for most of his adult life, he had been. His real estate empire, Harrington Real Estate and Development, spanned major cities across the globe. Skyscrapers in Shanghai, shopping centers in Dubai, sprawling luxury complexes in Beverly Hills. If it was sleek, grand, and expensive, Alexander had probably had a hand in its development. Yet behind the marble walls of Harrington Tower, in the penthouse stretching across the entire 80th floor, tension simmered. Sophia Harrington, pregnant with their first child, had noticed the shift in Alexander's demeanor months ago. Once upon a time, he arrived home excited to share tidbits about his day. Small jokes, random musings, and laughter over a late-night snack were the pillars of their private world. Now, he was silent, his phone always clutched in his hand, his jaw set as if bracing for confrontation. Sophia was no naive socialite. Born Sophia Kim to a family of determined entrepreneurs in Seoul, she grew up learning the rigors of business and the importance of loyalty. Love had found her in a swirl of New York lights and heady ambition. Alexander had swept her off her feet at a charity gala, drawn by her poise and intelligence. Their romance had been a headline grabber, back then a Korean business heiress and a New York real estate mogul. Society pages named them the new power couple, but for all the paparazzi snapshots capturing their perfect smiles, no camera could see the cracks forming behind closed doors. Sophia's pregnancy was supposed to be the start of something marvelous. They had tried for a long time. When the test finally read positive, Alexander had twirled her around their sunlit bedroom, pressing kisses all over her face, eyes brimming with tears of joy. But that tenderness faded far too quickly. By the time she reached her second trimester, Alexander seemed distant, and work consumed him more and more. Business trips multiplied, phone calls extended late into the night, and hushed text messages pinged incessantly. She would lie awake, arms curled protectively around her growing belly, wondering what he was doing, wondering if she was just imagining things. But the more suspicious she grew, the more her instincts screamed that he was hiding something. In hushed corridors and tinted boardrooms, rumors circulated that Alexander Harrington had taken an interest in a striking young woman named Crystal Chang, a Hong Kong native with exquisite taste and an alluring magnetism. Crystal was known to appear on the arms of wealthy men at exclusive events. She was rumored to be adept at using her charm in cunning ways, though no formal scandal had ever been pinned to her. The wealthiest families in high society recognized her face. Some pitied her, some envied her, but nearly everyone whispered about her. Alexander and Crystal first crossed paths at an extravagant fundraising gala for the Children's Arts Initiative, an event that allowed them both to publicly display their philanthropy. Under the shimmering chandeliers, she wore a wine-colored gown that clung to her figure, accentuating her every curve. The emerald ring on her left hand, rumored to have been a gift from a previous benefactor, sparkled as brilliantly as her eyes. She was dancing with Robert Maxwell, an older real estate developer known to be Alexander's rival, when Alexander spotted her. According to the rumors, Crystal's enchanting presence drew Alexander in like a moth to a flame. Her wit matched her beauty, and though there was something undeniably calculating in her gaze, he found himself enthralled. By the end of the night, he'd managed a handful of private conversations with her, culminating in a champagne toast away from the crowd. Unbeknownst to him, one of Robert Maxwell's assistants saw the two slipping into a quiet terrace and exchanging coy smiles. Like all secrets in the cutthroat world of the ultra-wealthy, it didn't remain hidden for long. At first, Alexander's staff, personal assistants, business associates, and family members dismissed the talk as nonsense. Alexander might have a roving eye, but he'd never publicly tarnish his marriage. His loyalty to Sophia seemed unshakable, especially with a child on the way, but as time passed, it became harder to ignore. Crystal made more frequent appearances at events where Alexander was a sponsor or guest of honor. Whispers swelled that she was more than just a fleeting interest. And each time a rumor caught up to Sophia, she tried to push it aside. She longed to trust her husband, to believe in the promises they had made at the altar. However, the final straw came when a close friend confided that she had seen Alexander and Crystal leaving a private lounge together at the exclusive Aurora Club. There was no mistaking Alexander's hand resting possessively at the small of Crystal's back. That evening, Sophia could no longer stay silent. She confronted him in their penthouse living room, the glow of city lights casting shadows across her tear-streaked face. "You're never home, Alexander. You barely talk to me. Is there someone else?" she demanded. He denied it, of course. His voice rose in indignation, the smooth veneer of sophistication cracked by the force of her questions. Yet, even as he tried to reassure her, even as he put on that charismatic smile, Sophia saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes. She knew in her heart that it was no idle rumor. She simply couldn't prove it yet. Crystal Chang's backstory was both a riddle and a cautionary tale. Daughter of a small-time antique dealer in Hong Kong, she had grown up surrounded by whispers of old money and illusions of grandeur she could only dream of. Driven by ambition and sharpened by financial hardship, she learned early on to market herself as a symbol of opulence. High-net-worth men were not just suitors, they were investments. When she met Alexander, she knew she'd found a prize unlike any she had pursued before. This was not some trust fund brat chasing thrills. Alexander Harrington was a powerhouse, an empire builder with an iron will and a sophisticated network that spanned continents. If she managed to secure his undivided attention, the wealth and power at her disposal would eclipse anything she had ever known. She could tell from his gaze that first evening at the gala that he was intrigued by her. Men like Alexander craved novelty, they thrived on competition and the rush of conquering the unattainable. By positioning herself as both seductive and elusive, Crystal gave him a taste of the chase. Phone calls turned into discreet dinners. Messages turned into stolen weekends. She was careful, always one step ahead, ensuring that their relationship, however illicit, remained hidden from the savage gossip columns and, most importantly, from Sophia Harrington. She had done her homework. She knew Sophia's father was a Korean businessman who had bolstered Alexander's standing in the Asian real estate market. She knew that Alexander's marriage to Sophia brought him high-level contacts he might not have secured alone. Crystal was not so naive as to think a man would easily discard such an advantageous arrangement. But she believed she possessed the one thing that fascinated Alexander more than profit, an unquenchable sense of thrill. Sophia's life began to feel like a lavish cage. Everywhere she turned, pictures of a smiling Alexander reminded her that he was the man with everything. Her attempts to reach him during the day frequently ended in voicemail. Staffers gave her polite yet vague explanations about his schedule. Even the condo felt suffocating, the once reassuring city skyline turning ominous. Her pregnancy advanced. She was well into her second trimester, and her emotions swung between hope and heartbreak. But behind her gentle demeanor lay a steely core. She was determined to protect her child and her family's honor. She began gathering small details, receipts left behind, cryptic text messages glimpsed over his shoulder. Her senses went on high alert, and every piece of data that confirmed her suspicions hardened her resolve. One evening, she found a receipt for a high-end jewelry store, date stamped 2 days prior. It showed a purchase of an extravagant diamond necklace, a style she would never wear and had never received. That night, while Alexander was asleep, she quietly called the jewelry store's personal shopper. Posing as Alexander's assistant, she confirmed the recipient's name. The store record read Crystal Chang. The final vestige of her denial collapsed in that moment. She sat there, trembling with anger and heartbreak, all the while feeling her unborn child kicking, as if protesting the emotional turmoil. Sophia didn't confront him immediately. A part of her still wanted to believe there was some explanation, or that maybe she could salvage this. Perhaps if she stayed patient and devised a plan, she could bring Alexander to his senses, or at least protect herself and the baby. But as fate would have it, Alexander's next move would force her hand. Months of clandestine romancing had emboldened Alexander in ways he never anticipated. He convinced himself that a weekend getaway with Crystal was the simplest path to release his tension. Pressures from the board, the constant demands of the press, and the guilt of living a double life wore on him. An all-expenses-paid trip to the Four Seasons resort Bora Bora sounded heavenly. Crystal pouted for weeks that she wanted to travel somewhere exotic, and she claimed to have never seen those famed overwater bungalows in French Polynesia. Alexander was typically more discreet. He prided himself on never being caught out. But desire clouded his judgment. He made quick arrangements, telling Sophia it was a high-stakes meeting with an international finance group. She didn't question it aloud, though internally she recorded every suspicious detail. The morning he left, she pretended to be asleep while he slipped out at dawn, luggage in hand. Crystal, for her part, arrived at the airport with sunglasses covering half her face, wearing a beige cashmere wrap. She met Alexander at the private jet terminal, exchanging a brief kiss that made her heart flutter with triumph. Indeed, flying private, away from prying eyes, was a perk she had only experienced a few times. She was determined to relish every moment of it. The flight felt like a dream. The plush leather seats, champagne on demand, and the knowledge that a billionaire was enthralled by her every word filled Crystal with a sense of power she'd never known. Meanwhile, Alexander was both excited and uneasy. He knew the risk. If word of this trip reached the wrong ears, his life could unravel. But gazing at Crystal's playful smile and slender fingers adorned with his recent jewelry gifts, he pushed the doubts aside. Sophia had sensed something monumental was about to happen when Alexander slipped out so early. There was no frantic last-minute rush, no goodbye kiss on her forehead. It was as if he didn't want to see her face or risk a confrontation. She suspected this business trip was the cover for a romantic escapade. While pacing their penthouse, she made a crucial decision. She would no longer wait silently for proof to tumble into her lap. She would find her own answers. She contacted Calvin Delgado, a private investigator with a sterling reputation for uncovering the secrets of Manhattan's elite. Delgado had come recommended through a trusted friend who had used him in a messy divorce case. Within hours, Delgado confirmed that Alexander had boarded a private jet bound for Bora Bora with a woman named Crystal Chang. He provided the tail number of the plane, the hotel reservation details at the Four Seasons Resort, even snapshots from the airport's security cameras. Sophia's fears solidified into a harsh, undeniable truth. A swirl of emotions engulfed her: heartbreak, rage, betrayal. But overshadowing them all was a protective instinct for her unborn child. She refused to play victim any longer. She was determined to make Alexander face his actions and accept the consequences of tearing apart their family. Despite her overwhelming sense of grief, she realized that making a public scene might harm her own reputation and that of her child. This wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about power, legacy, and future. Bora Bora welcomed Alexander and Crystal with gentle ocean breezes and turquoise waters. Their overwater bungalow overlooked the lagoon, its private deck outfitted with sun loungers and a plunge pool. Room service brought fresh papaya, pineapple, and passion fruit daily, along with top-shelf champagne at Alexander's request. For Crystal, it was paradise. She indulged in luxurious spa treatments, soared over the island in a helicopter excursion, and snorkeled with tropical fish, while Alexander watched her from a glass-bottomed boat. Each night, they feasted on gourmet dinners, seared mahi-mahi with vanilla-infused sauces, succulent coconut milk curries, and decadent French pastries. The highlight was sipping cocktails under the moonlight, while a gentle Polynesian breeze rustled the palms. Crystal felt like a queen, certain that she would soon replace Sophia in Alexander's life. But for Alexander, the euphoria was tainted by a gnawing sense of guilt. He wondered how Sophia was faring back in Manhattan, alone and pregnant. Although he told himself that he still loved her in some abstract, obligatory way, he couldn't resist the pull he felt toward Crystal. She gave him a sense of wild abandon he hadn't experienced in years. Perhaps it was an escape from the demands of fatherhood looming ahead, or the vanity of a powerful man wanting to prove he could have it all: wife, child, mistress, success. Yet at odd moments, he pictured Sophia's gentle smile, her excitement when they first learned of the baby, and he felt like a traitor. At night, Crystal would curl up against him, her perfume filling his senses, and he would push aside the guilt for just a few moments of lustful solace. He swore to himself he'd sort it all out once he returned to New York. Little did he realize that the sorting out was going to begin much sooner than he'd planned. Unbeknownst to Alexander, Sophia had not stayed in New York to cry into her silk pillows. With Calvin Delgado's meticulous planning, Sophia booked the next possible flight to Tahiti, then a short hopper to Bora Bora. She had no intention of slinking in with a vengeance. She wanted to approach this with tact, ensuring she maintained her dignity. Delgado's contacts managed to get them discreetly checked into a smaller resort on the other side of the island. It was scorching when Sophia arrived. She wore a simple yet elegant loose cotton dress, well suited for her pregnant figure. As she looked out at the bright blue expanse of water, she reminded herself to breathe. The child growing inside her was a life she cherished more than anything. Every ounce of heartbreak, every pang of betrayal would need to be channeled carefully. She could not risk her baby's well-being with an uncontrolled confrontation. Delgado gave her daily reports. Alexander and Crystal were hardly discreet. They were often spotted by staff, walking hand in hand, sharing cocktails at the poolside bar, and venturing into the lagoon. The staff, of course, had no idea Alexander was married to someone else. Wealthy men traveling with glamorous women was common enough in Bora Bora's exclusive hideaways. Sophia spent her first night in quiet tears, imagining the love of her life openly flaunting his infidelity in this paradise. But by morning, a new resolve took hold. She met with Delgado over breakfast, a quiet table in the corner where palm fronds offered natural shade. Together, they formulated the next steps. They needed enough evidence to confront Alexander in a way that would guarantee no denials. Photographs, recorded conversations, documented timelines. This would be the arsenal she'd use to protect herself and her child in the likely event that Alexander chose to escalate the situation. 2 days into Sophia's arrival, she finally saw them in person, Alexander and Crystal strolling along the beach, toes digging into the soft white sand, locked in an intimate conversation. Sophia hid behind a cluster of palm trees with Delgado, her heart galloping. She wanted to scream, run toward them, demand answers. The mere sight of him, laughing with this other woman, stung like salt in an open wound. Instead, she gritted her teeth and watched as Delgado's camera captured the scene from a distance. Alexander handed Crystal a seashell, and she playfully held it to her ear. For a moment, they looked like any other couple in love. This was the life Sophia had been denied, the romantic getaway she had every right to share with her husband. The betrayal felt immense. Her tears burned, but she refused to break down. She had a plan. Later that day, Delgado ventured onto the grounds of the Four Seasons, blending in with other tourists. He struck up small conversations with staff, discreetly recording tidbits about Alexander's and Crystal's preferences and schedules. He managed to snap a few high-resolution shots of them entering their private bungalow. Meanwhile, Sophia stayed in the background, fighting the urge to storm the place. She was waiting for the perfect moment, a confrontation that would leave no escape route for Alexander. Crystal, for her part, was reveling in Bora Bora's beauty, but she was not immune to tension. She noticed Alexander had sudden mood swings. 1 minute he was passionate and carefree, the next he would grow pensive and distant. He'd stare out at the water, swirling the champagne in his flute, lost in thoughts he never shared. More than once she wondered if he was thinking about Sophia. Crystal pressed him a few times. "Alexander, you've been quiet. Is something bothering you?" He brushed her off, forcing a grin. "Just a deal in Manhattan I have to secure, and a few things about my future." She tried to push for details about their future, maybe about how soon he would end things with his wife. But each time he evaded. A small kernel of fear sprouted in Crystal's chest. What if she was nothing more than a temporary thrill for him? A fling to soothe midlife fears? Yet she clung to the belief that she could manipulate him. She had done so with others, men with smaller fortunes and lesser cunning, but men nonetheless. If she could keep him enthralled, keep the adrenaline of the affair pumping through his veins, perhaps he would make the inevitable step of leaving his wife. 2 nights before Alexander and Crystal were due to return to New York, Sophia decided it was time for the confrontation. With Delgado's help, she secured a reservation at the same private dining beach area. Alexander had arranged for a romantic dinner with Crystal. The Four Seasons Resort offered couples an ultra-exclusive experience, a candlelit table on the sand, away from the main restaurant, where they could dine under the stars in seclusion. Sophia arrived first. She wore a flowy, off-white maternity dress that highlighted her gently rounded belly. Her hair fell softly around her shoulders, and though her eyes betrayed heartbreak, her posture was regal. Delgado waited out of sight, prepared to record everything. They had chosen a vantage point with enough distance to avoid detection at first. When Alexander and Crystal approached, a hush fell over the scene. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange. A table was set with fine china and flickering candles. But to their shock, Sophia stood there, hands folded protectively over her belly. Alexander froze in place, the color drained from his face. Crystal's eyes darted from Sophia to Alexander, then back to Sophia, confusion and fear swirling in her expression. Only the gentle sound of waves lapping the shore filled the silence. "Hello, Alexander," Sophia said, her voice tremoring but firm. "Enjoying your business trip?" He swallowed hard, trying to gather his wits. "Sophia, I can explain." Crystal, initially stunned, found a thread of arrogance to cling to. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, as though it was her right to question Alexander's wife. Sophia ignored Crystal. She locked eyes with Alexander. "You told me you had meetings with investors, but here you are on a romantic getaway with this woman." Her voice broke on the last word, but she steadied herself. "I'm carrying your child, Alexander. Did you honestly think you could hide this forever?" The moment was excruciating, like a tableau of heartbreak. Alexander's heart pounded. He wanted to rush to Sophia, to beg for forgiveness, but he also felt Crystal's presence weighing on him. His illusions about controlling everything had crumbled in an instant. In the distance, Delgado's camera lens caught every anguished expression, every trembling breath. Crystal felt rage surge through her. She had not anticipated this. She glanced at Alexander, silently accusing him. "Why didn't you handle your wife?" She had banked on the assumption that Alexander's marriage was already on shaky ground, enough for him to be with her so brazenly. Seeing Sophia here, pregnant and emotionally raw, threatened the veneer of excitement she had carefully built. "You can't just barge in on us," she snapped, voice trembling. "This is between Alexander and me." Sophia turned her attention on Crystal, her eyes fierce. "I'm his wife. You are an intruder in my marriage. Do not mistake your position." Crystal flinched at the calm, regal determination in Sophia's tone. Behind Sophia's vulnerability was a steel forged from heartbreak and a sense of justice. Alexander tried to speak, to mediate, but stumbled over his words. "Sophia, I never wanted you to find out like this." Sophia's anger flared. "You never wanted me to find out at all." That's the truth, isn't it? For the first time in his life, Alexander Harrington, powerful mogul and master of negotiations, felt truly powerless. He looked at Sophia, the woman who had stood by him through countless storms, and saw heartbreak. He looked at Crystal, the woman who awakened desires he couldn't suppress, and saw fear for her status. And for a moment, he saw himself as a coward for not making a clear choice earlier. Sophia, tears threatening to fall, pulled out her phone. "I have every piece of evidence I need, Alexander. Receipts for jewelry, photos of you two together, the flight logs, hotel bookings. You lied to me, and you lied to our child." Alexander's jaw clenched. "I didn't. He fumbled, the eloquence that made him unstoppable in business deals deserting him. Finally, he managed, "Please, can we talk about this privately?" She shook her head. "You want privacy now that you've been exposed? Did you think about privacy for me when you flaunted this affair in front of resort staff and your business associates?" Crystal couldn't stay quiet. "He's a grown man, Sophia. You're acting like you own him." Sophia's eyes snapped to Crystal. "I don't own him. We share a life, a marriage, and a child. If you believe you can come between that without consequences, you're delusional." Alexander moved to place himself between them. The tension crackled like distant thunder. "Both of you, calm down," he said, voice unsteady. "This isn't how I wanted things to happen." Sophia's voice softened slightly as she fought back tears. "How did you want it to happen, Alexander? Did you plan on eventually walking away from me and your child? Or did you think you could keep both of us indefinitely, as if we were business assets?" He stared at her, words failing him. His gaze flicked to Crystal, whose mouth was pressed tight in defiance. In that moment, he understood the magnitude of his betrayal and the impossible position he'd put himself in. The longer the silence stretched, the more it stung. The luxurious setting candles flickering in the balmy breeze, the serene lagoon under the moonlight only underscored the ugliness of the situation. Love, betrayal, greed, and heartbreak found their stage in paradise. Throughout the heated exchange, Calvin Delgado recorded from a distance, ensuring every confession, every damning word was documented. But Delgado's role wasn't just to gather evidence, he was there to safeguard Sophia. When it became clear that the confrontation was teetering on the edge of chaos, Delgado stepped forward. Making his presence known, he approached calmly. "Mr. Harrington, Miss Harrington, Miss Chang," he greeted each with a polite nod. "I'm Calvin Delgado, Sophia's private investigator. You'll forgive my interruption, but I believe it's wise we remove this discussion from public view." Alexander stared at Delgado, anger flashing in his eyes, but he couldn't lash out. He knew Delgado held all the evidence. The best he could do was glare. Crystal, however, hissed, "Is this your plan, Sophia? To humiliate him?" Sophia's voice wavered between sorrow and resolution. "No, my plan is to protect myself and my child. Humiliation is just a side effect of your choices, Crystal, and yours, Alexander." Delgado gently guided them away from the candlelit table and into a discreet cabana used for private massages during the day. The thatched walls offered some privacy. No more curious glances from waiters or passing tourists, but the tension didn't dissipate, it intensified. Inside the dimly lit cabana, with the soft hum of waves in the background, Sophia laid out her ultimatum. "Alexander, I will not tolerate a husband who disrespects me like this. You either end this relationship with Crystal immediately and commit to a full separation from her, or I'll file for divorce the moment we return to New York. And believe me, I have every piece of evidence I need to ensure the settlement falls in my favor." Alexander felt the weight of her words. The mention of divorce chilled him. The idea of losing half his empire, his child, and the respect he had cultivated over the years was a terrifying prospect. Moreover, a messy divorce could tarnish his carefully curated public image. "Sophia, please, let's not rush to decisions. I'll end this." Crystal's face twisted in fury. "End this. Alexander, you told me I was important to you. Are you really going to let her blackmail you like this?" Sophia turned her gaze on Crystal, tears still glistening. "If you think protecting myself and my child is blackmail, then you have no understanding of marriage or loyalty." Crystal's chest rose and fell rapidly, a mixture of rage and desperation. "You're just scared you'll lose your precious status if he leaves you." Sophia, stung by the accusation, shot back. "I might lose status, but I'd keep my dignity." "That's something you can't understand." Alexander, hands raking through his hair, tried to pacify both women. "Enough. I can't do this right now." Sophia held her ground. "Yes, you can. Decide. You walk down the aisle with me, you ask me to build a future together, and we have a child on the way. Either you're with me, or you're not. If you choose her, that's your right. But you will lose me, and you will lose your child." Alexander's phone buzzed in his pocket, an urgent call from New York. Ordinarily, he would ignore it, but the name on the screen caught his eye: Maxwell and Associates, the legal firm he worked with on significant projects. Torn between his personal crisis and the potential for a massive business deal, he decided to answer. He stepped outside, letting the sea breeze wash over him. "Harrington here," he said tersely. On the other end, his lead attorney spoke in a low tone. "Alexander, something's come up. We've received a tip that the tabloids got hold of some images of you and Crystal Chang. I don't know how they got them, but apparently you two are in Bora Bora right now, and the story is about to break." Alexander's eyes widened. "What? That's impossible. I've been discreet. His attorney sighed. Not discreet enough. The tipster even offered photos of you two at an airport. They're shopping it to every gossip rag in town. If it hits the press, your stock, your reputation, everything could take a massive hit. Not to mention a scandalous divorce. You need to control this. Fast. Alexander felt the world tilt. This was worse than a personal fiasco. This threatened his entire empire. He ended the call abruptly, adrenaline coursing through him. When he re-entered the cabana, both Sophia and Crystal snapped their heads toward him. "The press is onto this," he announced, his voice hoarse. "There are photos of Crystal and me. They're about to go public. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about my company, our future, everything." Sophia's resolve hardened. She had tried to handle this quietly, but it seemed the scandal was inevitable now. "Looks like you're going to learn the hard way that actions have consequences." Instead of panicking, Crystal saw opportunity. She had always believed in leveraging chaos. If tabloids confirmed her status publicly, Alexander might be forced to commit. The scandal could push him to finalize a break with Sophia, especially if the business community perceived him as already halfway out of his marriage. She placed a hand lightly on Alexander's forearm. "We can handle this together. I have connections, ways to spin the narrative. If you need me to go on record to talk to the press, I can." Sophia let out a laugh, devoid of humor. "You want to spin the narrative that you're a victim, or what exactly? You think the media will side with you, the mistress?" Crystal's eyes flashed. It's better for Alexander if he's seen as a man who was suffocated in an unhappy marriage and found true love elsewhere. Sophia's jaw clenched. He was suffocated by the responsibilities he willingly took on, a wife and a child. "Is that what you call suffocation?" Crystal refused to back down. "The public loves a good love story. We can claim it was inevitable, that his marriage was already loveless. Damage control is my specialty." But Alexander stepped away, narrowing his eyes at Crystal. "Stop. I never asked you to do any of that. You think you can manipulate the tabloids to see you as my heroic savior while you destroy Sophia?" Crystal faltered. "I'm trying to help you preserve what's left of your reputation. If your pregnant wife divorces you under claims of adultery, you look like a monster. If we spin it as you leaving a broken marriage for your true soulmate, it's more palatable." Sophia was aghast at Crystal's audacity. Even Alexander seemed stunned. The mistress was basically rewriting the entire narrative of his marriage in a matter of minutes. A sense of revulsion rose in him. He realized that if he followed Crystal's proposed script, he would be lying to the world, betraying Sophia in the ugliest way possible. For a moment, Alexander closed his eyes. He remembered meeting Sophia, how radiant she was in that silk evening gown, how her laughter lit up the room, how she didn't care about his money or empire, only about the man he was underneath. He recalled how she supported him through nights of negotiations, how she volunteered with charities, how she wept with joy when they confirmed her pregnancy. Every moment with her had been genuine. In stark contrast, this relationship with Crystal was built on secrecy and lust. Yes, she was exciting, and yes, she made him feel alive in ways he hadn't in years. But what future could possibly come from such a foundation? The scandal would be monumental. The tabloids would feast on them, and the cost to his personal and professional life would be astronomical. And through it all, Sophia, the woman who had given him her trust, stood pregnant and alone, threatened with humiliation and heartbreak. "I can't do this," Alexander muttered, and this time he was sure. He turned to Crystal, his voice steady but grim. "This has to end, now." Crystal's eyes flared in shock. "You're choosing her? You're going to let this entire thing blow up and pretend it never happened?" He exhaled a shaking breath. "I made a mistake, a massive one. But I can't rewrite my past with Sophia into some tragic love story where I'm the victim. She deserves better. My child deserves better. Sophia watched him, her expression guarded. She wanted to believe this was genuine remorse, not just panic in the face of public scandal. Her hand instinctively moved to her belly, a silent vow to protect the life inside her. Crystal's anger boiled over. "You'll regret this, Alexander. I've sacrificed my own reputation, poured months of my life into you, believing you'd actually leave her. And now you want to toss me aside like a used accessory? Leave if you must, but I can't continue lying," Alexander said. He hesitated, then reached into his wallet and pulled out a thick stack of bills and a check. "Take this. I'll have my accountant arrange for a settlement if you need more. But whatever happens next, I'm done." Tears filled Crystal's eyes, but they were tears of rage, humiliation, and thwarted ambition. She slapped the money away, letting it drop onto the sand floor of the cabana. "Keep your pity," she snarled. Alexander stood there, momentarily too stunned to retrieve the fallen bills. Crystal shoved past him, storming out into the night, unmindful of onlookers who might see her tears and interpret them however they pleased. The mistress had lost her position, her illusions, and the game she had played so brazenly. Silence enveloped the cabana. Sophia and Alexander stood face to face, Delgado hovering nearby with the weight of the evidence he had gathered. The tension was almost unbearable. Finally, Delgado excused himself softly, leaving husband and wife alone to confront the wreckage between them. Alexander spoke first, voice choked. "Sophia, I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know I never stopped caring for you. I was weak. I let the excitement and distraction get the better of me." She looked down at her belly, then back at him. "You didn't just hurt me. You hurt our child. You jeopardized the stability of our family. And for what? A fling." He swallowed hard. "I know I may have ruined everything. But if there's any chance at all, I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. Marriage counseling, a public apology, whatever you want. I just don't want to lose you or our baby." Sophia considered his words. Part of her heart was still shattered. Betrayal was a wound that might never fully heal. Yet she also thought about their history, the genuine love that once thrived between them. She recognized that she held the power to shape their child's future. "I'll consider it," she said finally, her voice trembling. "But know this, I won't stay in a marriage where I'm not respected. You have a lot to prove if you want to be a husband and a father." Alexander nodded, tears glinting in his eyes. "I understand." They stood there under the flickering light of a single candle, the tropical night wrapping around them, carrying the echoes of heartbreak and the slimmest promise of redemption. Word of Alexander's affair made headlines for a few days, especially once tabloids got hold of pictures of him and Crystal at the airport. But to Alexander's relief, the story soon became overshadowed by the next celebrity scandal. He and Sophia had anticipated a much more destructive media storm. To manage it, Alexander released a carefully worded statement through his publicist, apologizing for any distress caused and affirming his commitment to his family. It was a sanitized half-truth, but enough to placate a public easily distracted by gossip cycles. Behind closed doors, however, the fallout was severe. Sophia moved out of their penthouse for a time, taking a suite at a luxury hotel her father owned. She needed space to think, to grieve, and to decide if she wanted to remain in a marriage that had caused her so much pain. Alexander tried everything: therapy sessions, heartfelt letters, philanthropic gestures in Sophia's honor, yet he knew trust was not something one could buy back overnight. Crystal Chang, meanwhile, sold a brief interview to a second-tier gossip website, insinuating that Alexander had promised her far more than a fling. She claimed she was manipulated and misled by him. She provided no substantial evidence, and her claims didn't gain much traction. In some ways, she sank back into the same social circles that thrived on her brand of drama and unattached glamour. Months passed. Alexander poured energy into proving himself a changed man. He cancelled business trips, choosing instead to be present for every doctor's appointment. He accompanied Sophia to prenatal classes, each time humbling himself before curious onlookers who recognized them from the tabloids. His mother, Margaret Harrington, a quiet but forceful matriarch, also stepped in. She told her son that if he lost Sophia, he would lose the best thing that ever happened to him. That maternal admonishment cut him deeper than any business failure ever could. Sophia, still wary, couldn't deny how seriously Alexander seemed to be taking his atonement. He had moved into a smaller corporate apartment near his office, giving her the freedom to stay in the penthouse if she wished. In a gesture of respect, he refused to set foot in that penthouse without her explicit invitation. He also worked with lawyers to draw up a postnuptial agreement that heavily favored Sophia, ensuring financial security for her and the baby, no matter what happened in the future. It was as though he was financially guaranteeing his promise. No more lies. At times, Sophia's anger bubbled up, memories of his betrayal stabbing at her heart. Yet, she also saw how earnestly he tried to rebuild their relationship. This was not a quick fix or a plaster on a wound. It was a day-by-day reckoning. Each time they went for a walk, each time he read to her unborn child, each time he swallowed his pride and admitted his failings, a fragile new bond started to form. By the time Sophia went into labor, the scandal had largely been forgotten by the public, but not by those directly involved. Alexander rushed to the hospital, his face ashen with anxiety. He held her hand through the contractions, whispering words of encouragement. When their baby girl, whom they named Eleanor's son, Harrington, finally arrived, Alexander was overwhelmed by a wave of emotion so intense it brought him to tears. He cradled the tiny infant in his arms, promising her silently that he would be a man worthy of being called her father. For Sophia, the moment was a mixture of indescribable joy and lingering doubt. She saw Alexander's tears and wondered if people could truly change. But as little Eleanor grasped her finger, she felt a surge of unconditional love, and she decided in that instant that she would do everything in her power to give her daughter a stable family. In the weeks that followed, Alexander dedicated himself fully to fatherhood and husbandhood. He reduced his workload, appointing new senior management to handle the day-to-day operations of Harrington Real Estate and Development. His board of directors appreciated his delegation, especially as it opened opportunities for younger talent to shine. Therapy sessions became a fixture of their lives. Both individual and couples therapy allowed them to unpack the layers of betrayal, insecurity, and resentment. Alexander acknowledged that his affair was a symptom of deeper issues: his obsession with risk and excitement, his inability to communicate feelings of fear about fatherhood, and his struggles with monogamy in a high-pressure, high-temptation environment. Sophia had to grapple with her own emotional scars. She feared that even if Alexander never cheated again, she'd always doubt him. She worked through her grief, her anger, and the loss of the fairy tale she thought they'd had. The therapy sessions were raw and painful, but also cathartic. Slowly, they began to find a new form of closeness, not the naive passion of newlyweds, but a deeper, more honest connection forged through hardship. By the time Eleanor was 3 months old, Sophia decided she would move back into the penthouse, but only if Alexander joined her. He agreed with one condition: that they make fresh memories in the space, not tied to the illusions of their past. Sophia hired an interior designer to transform parts of the penthouse, incorporating warmer tones and child-friendly spaces. She wanted a physical representation of the new beginning they were attempting. That first night, when the three of them slept under the same roof, Alexander felt a cautious optimism he hadn't experienced in a long time. He listened to Eleanor's soft breathing in the nursery, to Sophia's presence beside him, and he realized this was a blessing he nearly lost. The vow he made on that tropical beach to never again take his family for granted resounded in his mind. Months later, Alexander received a letter from Crystal Chang. The letter was surprisingly short, a far cry from the dramatic confrontation they'd had in Bora Bora. She wrote that she was leaving New York to start anew, possibly in London or Dubai. She added a curt line, "I hope you find what you're looking for. I refuse to be just another forgotten chapter in your perfect story." Alexander read the letter, feeling a swirl of regret and relief. He kept it to himself at first, unsure whether Sophia needed to be burdened with it. But in the name of transparency, he eventually showed it to her. Sophia's expression was unreadable. She said nothing, merely set the letter aside. The ghost of Crystal Chang still lingered, but it was fading. They both recognized that these remnants of the affair might surface from time to time, testing their fragile, new trust. A year passed before Sophia felt ready to attend a major public event with Alexander again. It was a charity gala, ironically the same event where Crystal and Alexander had first locked eyes. The paparazzi were out in full force, snapping photos as they arrived. Alexander wore a classic black tuxedo, and Sophia glowed in a long, elegant evening dress. This time, Alexander held her hand tightly, guiding her through the crowd, introducing her to potential partners. Focusing his attention fully on her, there was a moment when a reporter asked, "Miss S. Harrington, how are you handling your husband's return to the limelight after last year's controversies?" Sophia smiled graciously. "We're stronger as a family now and very happy focusing on our daughter." She didn't flinch, didn't offer more details. That was all the public needed to know. Alexander, standing beside her, felt a rush of gratitude. He understood that trust was not a switch you flip, but a muscle you strengthen over time. The fact that Sophia was here, by his side, was a testament to her courage and willingness to give him a second chance. In the months and years that followed, Alexander and Sophia continued to navigate the delicate path of rebuilding their marriage. They had their share of arguments and setbacks. Sometimes, Sophia's suspicions would flare when Alexander received late-night calls. Other times, Alexander wrestled with guilt and the haunting memory of how easily he'd once succumbed to temptation. But each time they talked it out or brought it up in therapy, they learned to communicate with brutal honesty. Alexander realized that marriage was not about possessing each other, but about choosing each other every day, through every temptation and trial. Sophia found herself cherishing the simple routines, family dinners, reading Eleanor bedtime stories, strolling through Central Park on weekends. She saw that despite the ugliness of the past, there could be beauty in forging a more resilient bond, a trust that wasn't naive, but informed by reality. The story of Alexander Harrington's affair with Crystal Chang never entirely disappeared from high society whispers, but it receded into a footnote over time. More pressing scandals rose and fell. Harrington Real Estate and Development continued to prosper under Alexander's more measured leadership. He stayed true to his vow to put family before ambition, turning down deals that required him to travel for extended periods. As for Crystal Chang, rumors surfaced that she had moved to Dubai and was seen on the arm of a wealthy hotel magnate. Some said she was planning to open a boutique of her own, financed by a new benefactor. Whether she found happiness or continued chasing illusions, nobody could say for certain. In Manhattan, Alexander and Sophia welcomed a second child 2 years after Eleanor's birth, a boy named Theodore. Each step they took as a family was tentative, but each success or moment of joy felt like a triumph over the darkness of betrayal. Sophia still carried scars, as did Alexander, but they had both learned that love can endure the worst storms if both parties are willing to truly repent, forgive, and rebuild. The vow was no longer just words. It had become a promise renewed daily this time, with eyes open and hearts guarded but hopeful. Hearts can shatter, and trust can break, yet sometimes a second chance, if earned, can pave the way for unexpected strength. The story of Alexander, Sophia, and Crystal is a reminder that even the wealthiest of empires can crumble under the weight of betrayal, but genuine remorse and consistent effort can begin to heal deep wounds. If this tale of heartbreak and redemption resonated with you, please show your support for the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments, give this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe for more dramatic real-life stories and timeless lessons. Together, let's explore the complexities of love, loyalty, and the human capacity for growth. Thank you for being part of this story. And remember, no empire, no matter how grand, is stronger than the commitments you choose to honor.